briefing to tell reporters, set the record straight. This is what the result of this attack was. And you spend a good portion of that attacking the news media, which may or may not be deserving of attack. You are taking away, it's a distraction from the point of why you are addressing the assembled reporters and the nation that's watching as it's being podcast. You're not talking about what you want to impart upon the public actually occurred. You're spending time attacking the news media for the way it's covering it, because that is at least just as important as quote unquote setting the record straight. I don't get it. I've been in this business a long time. I've come under criticism from government officials who have not liked my reporting. But I'll tell you, in each case that has happened, when I've been attacked personally for my reporting, they never addressed the issue of the reporting. By doing that, they distracted from the issue of the reporting by trying to attack the character of the reporter. That is an indication that they really don't have much in their arsenal. If they attacked the facts of my stories, which they never did, nobody ever said I got it wrong. They attacked my motivations or something like that. So we have to listen very critically, I think, to some of that that's coming from the administration. I want to know what happened as best as they are able, without hurting national security, to tell us what happened. I don't want to hear that Jennifer Griffin is a horrible reporter, which in fact she is not, frankly.
Yeah, I want to hear that too, and I just kind of fear doing that will take away what should unite all Americans, whether they're for diplomatic or military or whatever sort of solution, is that the Iranians should not have a nuke. Like, that should be the goal. And I think anything, there was a big discussion about unpatriotic and that sort of yesterday. I think anything that kind of distracts the conversation from that basic goal is kind of unpatriotic. And I think the kind of attacks on the press is with such distraction.
If a reporter got it wrong, you can correct the record. But why do you have to do what Hexeth did today? They were former colleagues, by the way. It's amazing. Alan.
Gary, first of all, a point of order. How long have you been doing the critical thinking forum?
Well, how long have I been doing the critical thinking forum, or how long have I been doing this? Because
how long have you been doing the critical thinking forum on the...
Because there have been previous iterations.
Exactly.
We morphed from another platform where we started this before 9/11.
Before 9/11. That's what I wanted to know.
And Alan has been with me that entire time. Since, I think, a year before 9/11. Is that about right, Alan? I think a year before 9/11, we started this on Pal Talk. And I think we originally called it Pal Talk Global News, and then the Pal Talk News Network. During elections, we changed the title because the CEO wanted to change the title to be centric to elections, and then we came back. But we've been at this a long time, Yeah.
Jerry, I really appreciate what you do. And I recognize, I suspect, I mean, you can correct me and you don't even have to, but it's voluntary. You're not, this is not what
Oh,
you're.
no. I'm getting really rich out of all this, and that's why Scott is with me, because he knows that I will buy the dinner with all the riches. And yes, of course, it's voluntary.
Yes. Okay, well, thank you. Now, I really appreciate Scott's teaching on Augustine. I didn't really think that that was going to happen, and I apologize for not having my proper headset on. Never use Bluetooth if you're in broadcasting. Never, ever. It just, anyhow. I thank Scott for his marvelous exposition on Augustine, and I would argue, Gary, that Scott's point is that Dietrich Bonhoeffer, who might have lied about what he was doing, was highly superior to Donald Trump, who was just into bullshit. And I had a grandfather who was a missionary in China. And when the communists were coming, he was hid under a blanket by the Chinaman, and he told the officials that there was nobody under that blanket. That is not a bad lie. That is the same kind of lie that Dietrich Bonhoeffer would have done. That's very different than the bullshit that Donald Trump puts out. As a secondary point, and I'm going to be really short today, I adore what who Anson is and what he has done. But I disagree with him completely on his point yesterday about thanking Donald Trump. How can you thank someone who you don't trust? You may not believe that the JCP was effective. I think that it was. When Donald Trump tore up the agreement, he lit the match to put my house on fire. And then I'm supposed to thank him for being part of the fire crew that put out the fire? I don't buy that. So that's my contribution for the day. Thank you.
I happen to thank personally Donald Trump for the action that he took, and I thank the Israelis for the action that they took, no matter what it turns out to be, whether it set them back months or years or permanently. Setting them back is a good thing.
Does that mean you don't believe in the JCP?
No, I'm not discussing that. I'm discussing the facts on the ground today. I can't say, well, we shouldn't have done this because he effed up with regard to the agreement with, he tore up the agreement with Iran. That's a political question, and different people have different analysis of that, and that's a legitimate topic for us to discuss. But it is what it is, as some people like to say, and I've always been frustrated that Iran and its proxies, they want to destroy Western civilization. It's not just about Israel and the Jews. It is about Israel, and it is about the Jews, but it is also about Western civilization. That is their goal. And so I don't want them to have the nuclear bomb, and I don't accept the argument, oh, if the Israelis have the nuclear bomb, Iran, I trust the Israelis to be good stewards of whatever nuclear weapons they may or may not have. I do not trust, and I don't think anybody should trust, this crazy, whacked out regime in Iran to have any weapons, pea shooters, much less nuclear weapons. So I do thank President Trump and the Israelis for what they jointly did, and which culminated in what happened over the weekend. But it doesn't mean I have to wave the flag, because if I'm questioning, and I am questioning, and we should all question, what the hell is the truth? We keep getting contradictory assessments. If they don't want us to know, for national security purposes, come out and say, For national security reasons, we cannot tell you how effective this attack was. If that's the case, then just say it, and we can argue about that. But to give a, I was astounded today when I heard Lindsey Graham give one assessment and Mark Warner give another assessment of what they both had just heard. They walked out of the session and they both gave different assessments of what they heard. What the hell?
Yeah, and to that point, Gary, Yossi is going to post an article which says that the White House is now going to restrict the information that is given to Congress because of the leak, with no evidence as to who the link was, and the absolute cowardly Speaker of the House says, "Well, I think it probably was a leak. I have a leak. You know, it's like I have concepts of a plan."
Well, no, it was not a leak because the Congress had not been free.
Right.
It wasn't. They didn't share any of this with Congress. So
Right.
I'm not saying it wasn't a leak, but the leak couldn't have come from Congress because it was being leaked to them just at the same time as it was being leaked to you and me. But again, I think you can both question why we get contradictory information and support what the military did. They are not mutually exclusive positions to take. I don't think I'm being contradictory by taking the position that I'm taking.
I don't think you are either, and I fear authoritarianism more than I fear immigrants. I'll leave it at that. Gary, thank you.
You had to slip that one in. I got a lot of questions about what's going on with regard to immigrants too, and we can't get back to that because this is too serious an issue. But we will, I promise.
Thank you.
Yeah, Gary, I'll even give you one up on what Alan said. That press conference yesterday in the Netherlands with Hegseth on one side and Marco Rubio on the other side. And then, when the president wanted some support, Hegseth stepped into the mic and said, "You guys are just mean. All you're doing by raising these questions is you want to be mean to this man that's a hero." If that doesn't scream North Korea to you, I don't know what will. Hegseth yesterday said that if you want to know if this program was, still active or obliterated, you need to, go with a shovel and dig underground. Did he go with a shovel and dug underground for them to see if there is no uranium that was left in there, or if the bombs worked, the way they were supposed to? I was scratching my head yesterday, just like you said in your opening salvo, Gary, when people flipped this whole narrative about finding out whether this mission worked or not. It's simple. What is the damage that, that took place in the Iranian nuclear, their pursuit of the nuclear weapons? We need to know, did we really obliterate it just like the president and Hegseth said, a day after the attack happened? Or did they move uranium somewhere else like a lot of people are, mentioning? There is pictures, satellite images with trucks carrying uranium, whatever. Now Hegseth is saying, I'm pretty sure that the uranium was there and it's gone. So are we, yesterday I heard a lot of stuff about, well, all presidents lie. Yeah, they all lie. Bill Clinton lied about whatever that didn't cause any wars. This is big stuff that has consequences on, world peace, on, a whole region that's about to explode in violence and all that. This is not stuff that you can just lie about, little white lies. Well, it was obliterated, so we don't have to worry about Iran, I guess, from now on, because based on the president and his secretary of defense, there is nothing to worry about, except we got these, little assessments from people that should know, intelligence. I said, guys, hold on, not so fast. But the minute you say not so fast, it's like, well, didn't you know that those pilots flew for 36 hours on a B-2 bomber? And the president said yesterday, I guess, and the pilot was so hurt. They called me and they said, "But sir, we did our job." Everybody here is, we all agree that our pilots did wonderfully. Our Air Force functioned the way it was supposed to. The mission was great. It was something to be, like they, a lot of people said, to be, the strategy that they deployed with the, B-2 bombers that went as a decoy to the Pacific, and the other ones that flew with nobody in the world knowing what they were doing, and all that. That's a great success. No one is saying that is bad, or the military people did a horrible job. They did great. But to bring that when someone is questioning whether this worked or not, this has no relationship with how our military acted, and that's what prompted me to come up. I heard some of the headset and the general today. They again focused on the success of the mission as it was supposed to work, but then they could not give a definitive answer that from now on we don't have to worry about Iraq. Trump yesterday said, there was a question, I don't know if you all saw the press conference from The Hague, I guess, from the Netherlands. A reporter asked him, "Hey, at one point you said that you're going to solve the Russia-Ukraine war in 24 hours. He said, "Yeah, but that was sarcasm." And at the time when people voted for Trump, they were really thinking that the guy can just pick up the phone and solve that war in 24 hours. When are we supposed to believe that the stuff that he says is sarcasm? Because when it doesn't happen, of course it's sarcasm. I was just being sarcastic. It turned out to be way more difficult than it is, because now it's saying, "Oh, it's such a difficult conflict to solve." But when he was running for election, it was two things that he was saying. If I was president, this would not have happened. Solve it before I'm even elected, because in 24 hours I can just make a phone call. But now it's sarcasm because that didn't happen. So, one thing comes to mind is the mission accomplished banner that George W. Bush had. Let's be realistic about things. We all need to know, whether the Iranian nuclear program is, still has life in it or whatever, because the whole world doesn't need Iran to have nuclear weapons. Let's be realistic about that. I'm not just, toot our horns just because the person that we elected said that we won, that we're all going to rally and said, "Oh, we won, it was great, we don't have to worry about that." I don't know how they're going to spin that when in 6 months or whatever, it's going to come like, "Oh, by the way, they still have a lot of uranium." A lot of that, the uranium, by the way, was in the Asfahan region, and there was a lot of reports that it was moved. Who likes this fact that we think that Iran is not a threat anymore? The Iranians themselves, because their foreign minister came on TV and was like, "Oh yeah, we were hurt so bad." I would say that if I want someone to just not pay any attention to what I'm doing, I would say, "Yeah, you guys don't have to worry about us. We're done. We were hurt so bad in these attacks. Go away now." Thanks, Gary.
By the way, the search for the truth is not necessarily politically motivated. It's just a search for the truth. But in some cases, it is politically motivated. But why should we care what the motivation is of the person who is searching for the truth? This is why we have adversarial relationship in government and with the press. So what if the person who is demanding answers is doing so because that person is a Democrat and doesn't like Donald Trump or doesn't like the Republicans? Who cares? If the next president is a Democrat and does something worthy of critiquing, Are we going to say only Democrats or independents can critique that president? Republicans can't because they are politically motivated? The political motivation argument should be null and void. Let's just say that the leaking of the information on the initial assessment was politically motivated. I'm not talking here about whether it was legal, the ethics of releasing it. That's not the point I'm making. Let's just say, but we don't know this to be true, that it was politically motivated. So what? If it's accurate, it's accurate. I don't care whether it was politically motivated or not. I care about whether the information is accurate. That's all I care about. And I'm not saying that it was. It was an initial assessment. But even the White House recognizes that CNN accurately reported what was in those documents that were on that internal website that they were allowed to review, or they were given opportunity to review. So why do I care why? All I care is it true or not? And if it's politically motivated and it's inaccurate, then I'm going to point out, if I can, that the information is inaccurate. That's the point. And it's all this political rhetoric is a total distraction from the actual issue, and we've got to train ourselves to not allow that to occur to us, that we look at the facts. I mean, we're supposed to be in the critical thinking forum here, so we should be critically thinking about the information that is in front of us and not worry about all this other nonsense that we hear from people who are trying to protect their own positions and defend their positions or whatever it is that they're trying to do. I don't care about that either. I want to know what the truth is as best as I can get to it.
One last point, Gary, and I'll go down because I know you need time. Trump just said, I think it was yesterday or today, that Iran should turn over any enriched uraniums that they still have. Well, if we, trust Pete, it's underground and you need a shovel and it's below whatever 30 floors of whatever. Now there is talks about, well, in case they took it out, we need them to turn it over. Which way is it?
One other thing comes to mind, and I will shut up because there are a lot of people wanting to speak, and that is, we expect when we ask a politician or a government official a question that they have the answer to our question. I submit that there is no shame in answering with 3 words: I don't know. What's wrong with that? What is wrong with saying, Mr. Secretary of Defense, did we get rid of all of their nuclear capabilities, or is it possible that they have, and him saying, I don't know? What's wrong with that? If he doesn't know, he doesn't know. Which I suspect might actually be the answer to all of this. But I don't know either. Thank you, Monsef Brian.
Hi, Gary. I'm not going to argue one way or the other because, unlike you, I don't know, and I know that there's conflicting information, and I would just like to see the truth. There are things that bother me, and there's some things that I'd like to point out. I mean, Trump was, and you can correct me if I'm wrong on this, but he was the first one out of the gate to come on TV and to talk about it, the nuclear sites were obliterated, and he was also the first one to talk about, you guys questioning this when this CNN report came out, you're making the pilots cry. I'm glad I followed Monsef that he heard the same thing. So, that kind of bothers me. And then his followers, they pretty much take everything he says the word for granted. But there's things that we're not talking about that's bothering me. You know, whenever we had the tornado earlier, and whenever you see natural disasters, always a recovery. You know, when those places were bombed, there was no casualties like you mentioned yesterday. There's no rescue or what's that? What I'm talking about? There's no rescue recovery stuff going on. The bombs dropped. So, I mean, those things aren't automated. If there's enrichment of uranium and that kind of thing going on, that should be like a working factory or laboratory, whatever you want to call it. So, you know, where's the radiation? Where's the bodies? Where's the search and recovery? You know, nothing like that's being talked about. You know, Trump also said, "I know where the Ayatollah is." So you know, you guys watch yourself. You know, come to find out, reports came out saying nobody knew where he was. Well, he came out of the rock today or yesterday. You know, and he's claiming, you know, you guys didn't hurt us. And
Everybody's claiming victory. As I pointed out in the chat, it's a win-win-win.
Right.
The United States declared victory, Israel declared victory, and now the Ayatollah is. This is like a kid's soccer game. Everybody gets a trophy. Everybody's a.
You know, and he's putting out, you know, and he's being defiant today, saying, you know, we still got your U.S. military sites in our sights, so don't mess with us anymore. And you know, and back to Trump coming out of the gate, you know, him and Netanyahu are going to be in step with one another. Netanyahu, he asked for his criminal trial to be delayed today, and you can, I'm not positive on it, but I think it also was delayed. So in his assessments are matching up with Trump's, and then Trump also made public statements that, you know, Netanyahu's trial was a witch hunt like his, and that type of thing. So they're supporting one another. You know, that may just be friendship and have nothing to do with the information, but it leads me to believe that one's not going to conflict with the other one as far as the other areas go, like information and that type of thing. But that's kind of the things that it stinks. The whole thing stinks. You know, and the fact that they're not giving Congress all of the information, and Hegseth comes out with his squirrely statements, and if it's destroyed and you have proof it's destroyed, why not just give the people, at least Congress, all of the information? Give us what you think we should know to show that it's been destroyed. You know what I mean? Why not? It's all over it's chaotic. It's all over the board. It's conflicting. I mean, it shouldn't be like that. But that's where I'm at now. Shouldn't there have been people in those areas? I mean, when those facilities, there's 3 of them, were destroyed, and I mean, it's almost like they knew ahead of time it was going to expected it to be bombed, and they cleared that place out.
Well, even the president said that. They knew we were coming. He said that.
Yeah, so, you know, I don't know where the uranium is. I know Russia offered to house and keep the uranium for Iran. I don't know if that happened or not. That seems like we would be able to catch that if it happened. But anyway, that's where I'm at, Gary. Thanks.
Great debate right now in Israel, and answer your question over the president sticking his nose into what a lot of Israelis feel is internal business, and demanding that they drop the criminal case against Netanyahu. That country is as divided over Netanyahu as our country is over Trump. And there are a lot of people who appreciate what Trump did with regard to Iran, but who are being highly critical of him over those statements, which, by the way, the way he presented it, it was as if he didn't know this was going on. How did he not know this was going on? Either he's being disingenuous about that, or he was oblivious to it, and I don't know how he could have been oblivious to that, but who knows? By the way, with regard to whether uranium was moved before the attack, which again, it's another, I don't know, we don't know. There was, and I can't remember the source in the Israeli government, but the Israeli government said, somebody, that we know where the uranium is. That statement came out. Now, if that's accurate, and again, I'm not saying that it is, then that means that the nuclear program was not totally obliterated. Maybe with regard to the 3 sites, but that doesn't mean that it was obliterated. If they know where it is, that would presuppose that it's not all, at least, where the 3 targets were. We are at 6 o'clock New York time. We will get to everybody on the stage. We will not add anybody to the stage. However, Steve.
Yeah, Gary. The idea of moving material around is well understood because of things that have been done in the industrial sector. Where I live, we have fracturing, so geology and deformation of geology is a well understood science, very well understood. We had 2 men that worked 15 years on this project, working with PhDs that had intimate knowledge of the task at hand, doing modeling on the very site that we're talking about. We also had satellites that was monitoring the dirt and material that was going in there. So not only did we know where it was at, we knew the composition of the geology, we knew the composition of the structure, and we was constantly updating this and simulating the force that it would take to disable this on supercomputers. Now we can extract Trump and we can extract Hegseth from this because Kane went through all this. And these bombs was designed to penetrate 200 feet in hardened earth and just go straight down. Well, imagine that you don't hit earth, that you're hitting ventilation shafts, is which they did because that was the weak point in the structure. So instead of having a maximum depth of 200 feet, if you're going through a ventilation shaft, you're probably getting a lot more than that. So we're looking at a facility that had a depth of around 300 feet. We had 2 men working with scientists on how to destroy this site nonstop, constantly updating it based on the construction technique, based on the geology of the system. And if I was a reporter and I knew these facts and I seen an assessment that flew in the face of the science that was behind the strike, which Kane laid out clearly. He laid out the science behind it. He laid out how they arrived at what they used and how they used it. Now you're talking about just one going through a ventilation shaft and not hitting the type of resistance that you normally hit in earth and hardened rock. Probably that one went all the way to the bottom. We didn't hit them with 1, we hit them with 6. So the idea that this would not incur tremendous damage to the site boggles the mind. Don't believe Trump. Don't believe Hegseth. Take them out of the equation. Let's just talk about the guys that actually modeled this, that worked on it for 15 years, and had a plan to do this. And let's talk about the fact that it didn't go through hardened earth. That it didn't go. It had a concrete cap. That was the resistance. So if I'm a reporter, I'm looking at a report that, oh yeah, this bomb went down through a ventilation shaft, which didn't have much resistance, but it probably didn't do anything. I would tend to be a little skeptical of that, just based on the science of what's at play here. I wouldn't just take it and run with it and say, well, these guys, what they're doing. The analyst was not the people that done the research. The analyst was not the ones that knew the full capabilities of these bombs. Kane was probably in charge of this for a good period of time. And we're just blowing this off. Like these guys that have PhDs in geology and all the formations that they may encounter.
hold on a second.
And
Let's talk about
everything
that.
involved, we're
Let's
just blowing
talk
it
about
up.
the timeline. Explain the timeline to me. Explain the timeline. When did Kane make this comment?
He made it with a headset.
When? Timeline.
Well, I seen it yesterday.
Okay, and all these other things that you say that the reporters didn't do their due diligence.
Well, I would be a little skeptical, Gary, if I
Wait a
knew this
minute,
fact.
wait a minute.
I mean, come
I'm
on, that's
asking,
just
hold on,
straight
Steve, you're saying, I'm not arguing that what you're saying is inaccurate. I'm
You know
asking
what
about-
it'd be equivalent to, Gary?
Steve, I'm just asking for clarification
Okay,
of the timeline.
I'll give it to you.
I'm asking, so let me ask it. So you're saying that, that the revelation of what these scientists knew was made public yesterday. Is that what you're telling me?
Well, the general idea of what the bomb was capable of was known well before yesterday. The intricacies.
Wait a minute. Hold on. You just made an argument.
Because
You just made an argument. Steve, you just made an
Okay.
argument that based on what Kane says that these two scientists provided to the Pentagon, that the reporters should have been paying attention to what these scientists said before, but you are criticizing the reporting that occurred before that was revealed to the public.
Yeah. Well, Gary, it's kind of the argument you're making is this, and it's totally ludicrous in my mind. It's saying like, I got a 12-gauge shotgun. I know it can blow a hole in something, but if I don't give the exact parameters and the spread pattern of the shotgun, then I shouldn't have any idea about what the shotgun's capable of.
No, that's
the
not
argument you're making. Yeah, it is the argument you're making, because I'll tell you why.
I'm not making that argument to represent, and maybe I could.
All right,
I'm not being.
let me tell you why the reporters
just-
should have.
How did
Should
you?
have known
How did a
better.
report? So the reporters should not have reported what they knew when they knew it.
Well, they should have been skeptical, Gary.
Well, maybe they are skeptical. Maybe they are
Well,
skeptical.
if you had a report in front of you, then you knew a bomb went down a shaft with no resistance, and this bomb had the capability to penetrate 200 feet into the earth and harden rock. And you know the explosive power of this bomb, and then you look at something that this dude's showing you and said, yeah, but it didn't do anything. You had these basic facts in front of you. As a matter of integrity, I might want to check in. Does this make any sense, what I'm seeing on the screen here? Because it doesn't make sense. It went down a ventilation shaft. It was designed to penetrate 200 feet in earth and rock, not a ventilation shaft, and we put 6 in there. And you're saying that if you're looking at the screen, knowing all these variables, that you're going to believe, yeah, but it was just kind of like a little firecracker.
I think I need to educate, and it's a good thing you brought it up, because maybe a lot of people have to be educated about what reporters do. When reporters report, it's not a question of what they believe or what they don't believe. It's a question of what they know to report. At the time that the Defense Intelligence Agency, which was charged with making an initial assessment, they made an initial assessment, and it was accurately reported that this is what the DIA's it was accurately reported that this is what the DIA's assessment was.
Maybe they should have looked at the fact that the report said it had a low confidence level too. Maybe they should have looked at that.
They did. I watched all that reporting as it unfolded.
Well, that should make you a little skeptical.
That's up to you. That's up to you and me. That's up to the. Listen, Steve. It's up to the individual consumer of the news to determine whether they are skeptical or whether there's a high degree of veracity to what is offered. and we're all
So,
going to interpret.
as a reporter, if you gather information and it's conflicting with known facts,
It wasn't a known fact.
It was known fact about the potential of these bombs. It was known facts that these bombs went down a ventilation shaft. It was known facts that these bombs had a penetration depth of 200 feet. This was known. They knew that. And there was 6 of them went down the shaft.
So then you're suggesting that there's... Okay, wait a minute. So you're suggesting that it was a waste of taxpayer money and continues to be a waste of taxpayer money for the intelligence community to try to assess how effective the attack was, because we knew even before the attack occurred that it was a success.
Well, there's levels of destruction, Gary, and if you're gathering information, you want to make sure you understand the complete picture. But
Okay, let's understand the complete picture, because I want to
hold it just a second. I guarantee you there was not one general in that Pentagon, when those missiles went down that ventilation shaft, believed anything other than they had hit the bullseye and mission accomplished. I guarantee you not one of them doubted that.
Okay,
knowing the facts about it, knowing the facts about the properties of this bomb.
Okay, fine. Let's accept that, Steve. Let's accept that. Now let me ask you this. Do you agree with Lindsey Graham's assessment, or do you agree with Senator Warren's assessment?
Yeah, and for you to say this is contradictory. No, there's 2 elements to this that are true. Both of them agree that the 3 sites, which was the primary objective of this raid, was accomplished. The only fact in question is where's the uranium. And for everyone to say the nuclear program's still around because they got 60% of uranium, you tell me where's the centrifuges that's going to spin that up and turn it into 90% if they're at the bottom of a mountain. How are they going to do it?
Do you know that?
How are they going to spin it up? How are they going to spin that and turn it into 90% uranium if it's at the bottom of a mountain, Gary?
Yeah, so you are aware that, because this is breaking news, to quote Tucker Carlson, you're making news here, Senator. That's what he said to Ted Cruz. You're making news here, Steve. I didn't know that Iran doesn't have other centrifuge facilities elsewhere.
So you're assuming that the Mossad and the CIA is just totally incompetent. That's the assumption of right?
Did I say that? Did I say that?
You have to assume that to believe that the Mossad, one of the best intelligence agencies on the face of the earth, and the CIA that has satellite reconnaissance over this nonstop is incapable of detecting another centrifuge site. Do you hear yourself?
I didn't say that.
Well, that's an implication. That's an implication you're making.
No,
yes, it is, Gary.
No, listen, Steve.
It is.
Disagree. Steve, you're welcome to disagree with anything I say. You're not welcome to put words in my mouth. And I did not say that.
Well, you asked the question, could there be other centrifuge sites? What's the implication of that question? What's the implication of that question?
There is no implication to that question.
Well, sure there is. The implication of your question, Gary, is simply this. We may have taken them out, but they hit a little thing over here, so the threat still exists. That's the implication of your question, and you know it.
It's not an implication of anything. I'm saying explicitly, you don't know what the CIA and the Mossad knows. You don't know that they don't have their eyes targeting another site that you and I don't know about.
Well, no, I don't.
Okay, so how can any of us?
But I do know this. Gary. How long has the nuclear program been a problem for Israel? How long has that nuclear problem been around for the United States? And you're telling me in this whole time when we've been in this quagmire with this nuclear program that somehow we took our eyes off the ball and didn't pay attention to what they''s done. It's asinine to the core. It's asinine to the core.
Okay, Steve, you are projecting. I never said that.
I'm not projecting anything. I'm not projecting.
You are, because that's not.
I am
that's
saying
not-
there are clear,
Okay.
there are clear facts at play here.
Okay.
The facts,
Okay, so
the
let me
facts at play.
apologize. I'm going to apologize to you because obviously I'm not a very good communicator today because I'm saying one thing and you're feeding back to me something that I didn't think I said, but apparently I did, and thank you for correcting me.
If I misinterpreted anything you said, Gary, I apologize. I didn't mean.
You're not
I didn't
listening.
mean.
Well, then you're not listening to me when I'm telling you that you misinterpreted it. And one of two things happened here. Either you misinterpreted what I said, or I did not accurately express myself in my questioning of
It
you.
could be a combination of both, Gary.
Right,
It could be a combination of both.
All right, but please don't, when I tell you that's not what I'm saying, I'm not lying.
All right,
That's not what I'm saying.
You're right. I shouldn't extrapolate that. But it defies logic for me to know that we had this kind of intensity, we had this kind of development, we had this type of knowledge, not only in the military, but in the private sector about breaching rock formations. Like I say, the fracturing industry in oil and gas is a well understood scientific field. We know this stuff. And we know that these bombs, which can penetrate 200 feet through rock and dirt, went through a ventilation shaft with a low concrete cap on top. What kind of impeding action do you think that had? And we put 6 in there. And we're still debating about whether it went off like an M80 at the bottom of that hill or it really done damage. It is asinine to the core. The logic at play here. And I'm out.
All right, Steve. Mojo.
Yeah, let me just say that it is a privilege and an honor to share a stage with you, Gary. I'm glad that you're consistently doing these rooms. It's amazing. As for the speakers that I've listened to over the last hour and 18 minutes or whatever it's been, I think they've had interesting takes. That is, if their goal was to completely ignore everything that matters. And the thing that matters is that we now have an administration that is willing to bomb Iran. That is what matters. The fact that, whether or not, we did some damage, completely obliterated it, completely irrelevant. If they decide that they want to send people and weapons and equipment out to those sites, we can simply bomb them again and again and again and again. It took us 50 years, but we now have an administration that is willing to understand that Iran is the head of the snake, specifically the IRGC. I have no smoke with the Iranian people. I have smoke with their government, and their government sponsors terror everywhere. And so as long as that is the case, I think the United States is late to jumping into this. I want to credit Bibi. I want to credit the state of Israel, Donald Trump, and the United States military for what they're doing. This is overdue. And the fact that people are worried about how much damage was done, who cares? We're now on record of saying, if you can't have a bomb, and if we see that you're trying to obtain one, we're going to bomb you. We're going to bomb you. It's no more talk. It's actually it's moved to action, and I couldn't be fucking happier. Thank you.
I should have known when I saw the cigar who you were. Thank you, Mojo.
I'll keep it short, Gary, and I got a bunch of folks here on stage. I think there was talk earlier of the president Hegseth attacking the press and playing victim. 100% agree that's distraction. It's not just distraction and unprofessional. It's just such a fool's errand. Just like a leader of the free world, acting out like he's an upset moderator on Clubhouse. Like that's what Trump is giving. Not to mention, I think someone referenced the lines that sort of trying to control criticize the press aligns with Russia, aligns with China, and journalists disappearing. So I think at the end of the day, there was a gentleman here that you referenced, older gentleman who's very biased, and I can understand from his years of service. I believe as a Navy submarine.
We're all biased. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So let me just, because the word bias has a negative connotation. And look, I have an opinion, but if you disagree with me, you don't have an opinion, you're biased. We all have opinions.
Agreed. No, I say that to say because when you had mentioned earlier that we need to, if we are criticizing Trump, the leader of this country, that means we're criticizing the military and the efforts that the young men and women in those B-52s did, which I don't think anyone can argue whether you're pro or anti-military, was incredibly impressive. And criticizing that, well, they didn't do their job, they hit the target, but did they do enough damage to achieve the objective? So we don't know. The bottom line is nobody knows, aside from those that know, and getting these constant mixed messages. As you said earlier, Hegseth can just say, we don't know at this point, too early to tell, we're still investigating what damage we've done, but just to flat out say, oh yeah, this is what's happened. It's like, are we thanking the president for his intent to go after and disarm any chance of Iran having nuclear weapons? Are we thanking him for the impact of trying to control the media, trying to control the narrative, and literally it's your way or it's his way or the highway? And how dare you question the authority of the emperor as a journalist? I think that is pathetic, and it's bad enough that they can't give us some sort of consistent answer. As you said, several high-ranking officials came out of that meeting with very different variations of the movie they just saw. Now you have folks in Clubhouse on both sides perpetuating misinformation as well. Thanks.
Thank you, Moose. Dominic.
Am I up?
Dominic is up, yes.
Okay. Hey, Gary. I'm going to keep it brief because that was a mouthful between you and Steve. I wanted to mention a couple of things. Well, I disagree with you on the validity of the CNN report, but I'm not going to go there. I'm going to defend CNN's right to publish whatever they want. I believe in the first amendment.
Are you suggesting that the report was inaccurate?
No, I'm not suggesting.
Oh, because you said validity, so I'm just.
I thought you were putting words in my mouth.
No. I'm very sensitive to that. I just explained how sensitive.
I know how sensitive you are.
But I was asking you. I was not telling you what you.
I see. Okay, no, I just want to stand up for CNN's right to publish whatever they want to publish. I also wanted to go back to what Scott had said earlier, right at the top of the show, when he brought up St. Augustine's treatise on lying, and the other fellow's memorandum on bullshit.
Harry Frankfurt.
Yes, thank you very much. 1986, I can't remember. I was thinking of great heroes who are known for being both liars and bullshitters. Odysseus is the first that comes to mind. The great hero of the Iliad and the Odyssey, who has been made heroic. So let's just say for the last 3,000 years, for being both a liar and a bullshitter, which is interesting. And of course, St. Augustine is kind of like, he's the guy who quit smoking, who says smoking, he can't be around anybody who smokes. and I don't want to hold that against him. He found God. The other thing I want to mention, Scott, is I was wondering who was lying and who was bullshitting at the Council of Nicaea when that great argument took place between who Christ was.
If you're going to ask me to wholeheartedly defend Athanasius, despite my passion for Christian Orthodoxy, there might have been some bullshitting by Athanasius. I will admit that.
I was wondering if Saint Nick was righteous when he slapped, who was it? He slapped somebody across the face for having the temerity of saying that Christ was not God.
Well, not that Christ was not God, that he was not co-substantial with the Father. He said he was divine.
He was sort of divine. Yeah,
absolutely
justified. My point is that my point is that it's simply put that to make a villain of someone who is accused of being a liar and a bullshit is an interesting an approach to handling the subject, because this has been going on, I think, since the Babylonian kings. I don't know where the morality, where the dipstick is on morality. But anyway, I'm going to be quick. I love you, Scott. I love you, Gary. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Dominic. David. David, are you there?
Hello.
Sorry, Gary. Sorry.
We go one at a time. I'll get to you. The person who's trying to get on. David, it's you. No. Solar, it's not your turn yet. I'll get to you. Don't worry. Go ahead, David.
Gary, great room. I've learned a lot. I definitely want to believe that Trump has destroyed their ability to continue to enrich the bomb. However, if they just at a minimum, not necessarily maximum, destroyed the entry points of these facilities to where Iran can't get into these facilities anymore, then that's definitely a positive win. But recall that he was giving them a 2-week window to get their act together before he bombed. He telegraphed what would happen. So what's to stop Iran from removing some centrifuges, or there's talk that they have some other private facilities that we don't know about, and they only need to enrich another 40% to 90% to get to bomb level grade nuclear capability. I've also heard it argued that their stockpile that's unknown can fit up to 60%. The uranium that they're trying to hide can fit into about 16 cars, the trunks of cars. And so these things can be anywhere. And, the argument to be made as to why Iran will produce a bomb goes back to what Robert Gates said in 2012, that we have to get this done through negotiations. We can't militarily stop them from doing this. We saw what happened to Ukraine when they gave up their nuclear capabilities. We saw what happened to Gaddafi. We've seen what happened to other leaders throughout the world. And all we're doing is pushing a very right-wing reactionary component of the IRGC into a corner. They may placate and say, they may placate the West with regard to, we're gonna try to reform, but make no mind, Gary, if they have any way to make a bomb right now, they're sprinting toward that reality, in my opinion. And if it doesn't take much to get there, what are they going to be able to produce that could potentially be damaging to Israel, the West, and its enemies? And that's a dirty bomb, potentially. The same bomb we dropped on Hiroshima. They could put it into a hull of a ship. There's a lot of ways in which they could possibly try to deploy this. So let's hope that Trump can get them to negotiate the table. Let's hope
that Netanyahu can hold back. I mean, I think the three leaders had three goals in mind. Israel's goal was to continue to bomb to regime change. We were trying to bomb to end the nuclear program. And Iran was just trying to survive. And it looks like all three have somehow won and not won at the same time. So let's just say that Trump is right. Let's say that he did get to it. But what if he didn't get to the other stuff? How are we gonna stop further enrichment from happening? Because now it gives them every argument to continue to move forward, because we've shown we're not good faith actors in negotiation. Trump bombed him after he said, we're going to give you 2 weeks. He told him that you saw what happened. They saw what Netanyahu did when they was in 6 days of negotiation. So how are we going to solve this diplomatically, if not militarily, without going a full-blown war along the lines of Iraq? I mean, it took George W. Bush a year of negotiations and putting together so-called evidence, congressional hearings, bringing our allies before we went to war in Iraq. Well, Trump did this overnight, and now he's saying the intelligence that we did have was wrong. And now he's trying to cow everybody from Gabbard on down that they better get in line or they're going to be out. And potentially somebody's going to be doing some jail time for these leaks. And of course, our press is just trying to do what they're supposed to do, which is be the fourth estate and give us the information we need so that we aren't living in fear, so that we can understand and check our elected officials, and that our democratic elected representatives can do their job. And yet the whole thing seems to be shrouded in a cloud of secrecy now. And just listen to us. We're the experts. We know what we're doing. And if we have to send your men and women in uniform to fight for these ideas, we're going to do it. So I think that's the state we're in today, Gary. I want Trump to succeed. I want him to, I heard that I heard one talking point that he was able to do, which not a lot of U.S. presidents were able to do, and that was to get Netanyahu to stand down when he was sending in those strikes and he those jet bombs on the state of Israel. So, on the one hand, I think he is attempting to get to the peace, if nothing more than to just, for his own ambitions of a Nobel Prize. But at the end of the day, I think we need to have as much transparency with regard to this. Otherwise, we're all just living in fear, Gary, and crossing our fingers and hoping for the best. And I'll end there.
Thank you, David. And
Hey, Gary. I'm going to try to be brief. I had a few things. I was going to react on the comments that Alan said about JCPOA, but it's not the place now to litigate it. But there was all kinds of issues with it, and it was a very bad deal. And by now it would have been sunsetting, and we would have been in a different situation. I do want to say, and I put this in the chat, that although you see conflicting statements that were coming out, the Israeli media, the Israeli news, the Israeli military sources have been consistent with the destruction of these sites. The Israeli press and the government would have no reason to want to say that they were obliterated or destroyed if they felt there was still a risk and an existential threat for their country. They may not have gone into a ceasefire then. They would have needed to go in and finish and take out what's still existing there. Their intel and their boots on the ground, and not to take anything away from our CIA, has been embedded in that country for years. I mean, you just saw them take out how many generals and scientists in one fake meeting that they had fake telephone accounts I'm trying to remember the story now. I just read it this morning on how they got everyone to gather. I mean,
they received a message on an internal system to come to an urgent meeting.
Exactly.
And they responded to that urgent meeting, and then, to use the term that the Israelis used, they were eliminated.
They were eliminated. So my point is, they have been, I mean, the spy network has been pretty incredible there. Not just Mossad, but they have factions within Iran and minorities within Iran that have been very much against the regime and working with them. And leave that point aside for a second because I want to go back to it. But so the logic to me is pretty clear that they would have a vested interest if this wasn't completed. They also, and I put this in the chat, the footage, you know, they had boots on the ground and commandos the day before we went in, verifying the locations for the targets. And, you know, that's all that is now coming out and part of our intelligence and the intelligence that we got from them. So I really think you can't discount that when you look at the validity or what's verifiable or what seems to point to that this job was completed. I do want to say that also on that side note that there's been at least 500 now Kurds that have been killed, and the Ayatollah has been going in with a vengeance now to crack down in that community, claiming that they're all tied in with Mossad, and it's very frightening what they're doing now in Iran, trying to find out where these sources are that fed the Israelis the information. Along with that, the Ayatollah came out in his official statement saying, and I put this in the chat, that in fact acknowledging that civilians were what they were attacking, and that was their intent, to attack civilians. And I don't see anything from the United Nations or any kind of statement from the international community condemning them for the specific targeting of civilians. Where is the outrage from the UN on that? So
I saw so many videos about that. You are absolutely.
I mean, it's just really abominable what's happening within Iran and also with the Ayatollah. It's as if, you know, he gets a pass, but Netanyahu takes cigars and wine from you know, as a corruption trial on bullshit, and he's the corrupt, horrible one in the world, and the one that the potential mayor of New York wants to arrest, but the Ayatollah gets a pass on this. So that's the other thing I wanted to say. I hope that the source that was the leak ultimately gets found out and gets prosecuted for that. If there's someone within Congress and the halls of Congress is leaking classified information, they should be immediately stripped of having any kind of access to government information and prosecuted. And the last thing I want to say is that people also are forgetting that many civilians have lost their lives in Israel and lost their homes. Everything's been destroyed, and you know there's civilians that have suffered from this, and we shouldn't lose sight of it. Potentially, the good news from this is what could come out and what now Trump is talking about with respect to going back into the Abraham Accords and to expand them now to Syria and Saudi Arabia and other Arab and Muslim countries. And those discussions are now opening up. Israel now is expressing a willingness to resolve the conflict with the Palestinians, perhaps with some kind of two-state possible solution. This would obviously involve the recognizing of the Judea and the Shomron, or Judea and Samaria, and the U.S. would have some recognition of the sovereignty there. I mean, so maybe perhaps it'll come out that the hostages can get released as part of these negotiations, and that this could put an end to the war in Gaza as we go through the negotiations with the 4 Arab countries, Egypt, the UAE, and that are affected by this, and who will come in and manage Gaza. So I think that there's a lot that can come out in the next couple weeks that's a positive from it, and we should be looking at that as well. So that's all I have to say. Thank you, Gary.
Thank you, Abby, and I'm glad you pointed out the contradiction in the world community's reaction to all of this.
the way the Israelis prosecuted this war, hitting military targets, and the way the Iranians prosecuted this war, specifically targeting civilians. Several people got on the stage, somehow slipped in past the deadline, so I'm not going to get to everyone, but I will make an exception. Anson, hang in there. I will get to you because Solari, you're second in line. Hold on.
Hey, Gary, can I just say one quick thing?
Yeah.
I just want to say I thank my friend Abby for all of her clarity and all of the facts and if Trump had been that clear and articulate and candid and truthful, we just wouldn't be having this discussion. And I consider this about several speakers who have brought stuff to light, which is great. And I think I wish the president spoke with this much clarity, and we wouldn't, we could be talking about another topic.
Thank you, Scott. Anyways, I was saying I'm going to extend at the end Anson an opportunity to respond because I asked a lot of questions at the beginning about his commentary yesterday, and he was tied up in a doctor's appointment and couldn't join us on stage until now, and he deserves the opportunity to respond. So hang in there, Anson. I'm going to get to you. Orange Cellar.
Hi Gary, thanks for giving me the time. I'm an Iranian living in Canada.
Have you question for Gary? Yes.
Solar, you have to wait your turn, and you are actually next in line after the current speaker. Please stand by. Orange.
Thank you, Gary. I've been following the conflict between Iran and Israel for the past few years. Judging by the satellite pictures we got from the war zone, published, provided by Maxar, you see there's a picture of a train of trucks at the border side. They appear to be carrying the tanks for the gaseous uranium hexafluoride. And before this whole issue started, and I knew they were going to bomb it, I said the best thing to do is to knock down the regime so they can go in with the International Atomic Energy Agency experts, including Americans, to take out the uranium without risking anything. But that's not the way it turned out. But they wanted the uranium to get out of that place. And they've been threatening to bomb it. So that picture appears to show they did take out the uranium and gas.
Let me just interject that not everyone's assessment is such.
Yeah, I agree.
There's a big assessment suggesting that they weren't there for material removal, but to reinforce and seal the site.
No, my assessment of the satellite.
That's your assessment, but I just want to point out that others assess otherwise.
Exactly, that's true. My assessment is that they took out the uranium because there's a big reason here. What connects everything together, including the snapback clause of the JCPOA, is the existence of IAEA, International Atomic Energy Agency. Their inspectors taking, essentially keeping track of how much uranium at what level of enrichment exists in Iran. And the entire amount is about 8 tons. What they're currently concerned about is about 408 kilograms of 60% enriched uranium. And it would have been foolish to bury that material down in Porto because the agency, the Atomic Energy Agency, would not have been able to keep track of it. Okay, so, and then the other thing is the satellite picture that shows them, and I claim that this is, the picture shows them taking out the uranium. It was 2 days before the bombing by US forces. And the people who would know best where those trucks went to is the Israelis, because their drones, their Hermes 900 drones, were flying all over Iran And in fact, we have video footage of the Iranians who shot down at least 2 of them. But today I read in the news that they claimed to have shot down 14 of them. I don't know if that's true or not, but I'm sure they hit 2 of them. So the Israelis have kept track of where those train of trucks went to. And then the other thing is, so they know, and Netanyahu did say, is that we have a very good idea of where that uranium is. Now, there's other issues.
It's extremely hot in here.
Before that uranium can be turned into metal, it would have needed to go through the UCF facility in Isfahan. That's the uranium conversion facility. That's where the gas, the UF6, uranium hexafluoride, would need to be turned into metal to be used in a bomb. Not a warhead, just a bomb. Just like the Trinity object that they exploded in New Mexico in 1945 before the Japanese bombed. So without that uranium conversion facility, there's no way that uranium is going to turn into something to be able to be used in a bomb. And the way that you have to remember, Iran has plenty of mountains. And under any mountain can be another cave with a whole lot of centrifuges to enrich uranium. And for sure, as sure as you and I are alive and speaking to each other right now, there's other enrichment facilities in Iran. And they have the know-how of making those centrifuges, and there's sufficient amount of uranium mines, not very large, but enough for digging out the uranium, enrich it to bomb them 90%, they say. So even if Fordo is truly obliterated, and the uranium is totally gone and cannot be enriched by any human ever again, the possibility of Iran, or to be exact, the Islamic Republic, repeating this whole thing again exists. So the real problem is not the uranium or the facilities, it's the political will of the Islamic Republic. That's when the Islamic Republic is no longer there, that's where the nuclear threat from the Islamic Republic is going to go to zero. So no matter how successful the bombing has been, the threat has not gone to zero. But I claim that my claim is that the uranium is still there, and even though they can turn it, they cannot turn it into uranium metal. They're going to use it as a bargaining chip. And this ceasefire between Israel and Iran, this is going to be broken. At least the other reason for it is that the long-range missile bases have not been obliterated. I thought the Israelis are not going to leave until they take care of all the long-range missiles, and I don't think they have.
I think the latest assessment is they got 60% of them, so 40% still exists.
Yes.
Thank you, Orange. I got to move on. Otherwise, I'm not going to be able to get to the answer as promised. I just want to point out, as you were talking, I looked this up. The president, for what it's worth, I know we're discussing veracity as the recurring theme of today's conversation, but I'm looking at his report, and he said that they had not removed any uranium from the site. He says that the vehicles to which you refer, Orange Cellar, were operated by concrete workers, quote, trying to cover up the top of the shafts, and quote, nothing was taken out of the facility. I don't know. I don't know. No, hold on. I don't know whether that assessment is accurate or inaccurate, but I just wanted to put on the record that that's what the president said. And I gotta move on because I gotta get, I promised Anson, and it's 6:50 now, and I've got a drop dead moment where I gotta walk out the door to catch the train. So, sorry, cannot. Sadar, if you can make it brief, that'd be great. We're gonna go Sadar and Dude, and then Anson. We're gonna do it in 10 minutes. Dave and Elmer, I can't get to you.
Sorry, Salar. Unbelievable. He kept interrupting and now he's not taking the mic. Dude, and then Dude. Answer.
Very briefly, and I've got to respond to the guy that was speaking last. I have significant academic background in nuclear physics and nuclear engineering, and I have 35 years of working in that field. I have been in and seen the operation of centrifuges at Oak Ridge, and I was the president of the company that converted the metal into bomb that took the metal from Oak Ridge and built the bombs. I hear misinformation. They're not lying. They're just, it is not accurate scientific information. And I wish I could, well, I don't have the time to rebut it, but it is very frustrating. But that's beside the point. As to what I said yesterday, I was in the doctor's office. I heard your critique. I heard a few people, not many, and then I had to consult with the doctor. Basically, my purpose in speaking and the message I wanted to convey was the title of the email that I sent you, Gary, which was negativity. Too much of it, too bitter on both sides. It's the great divide, and I've had that theme in this room ever since I've been in this room for several years. We've got to be able to do something about it. Trump you cannot rely on what Trump says. Whether that's good or bad, you cannot rely on what Trump says. But you can rely on what he does. Last Saturday, we launched a surprise attack that we had the ability, we started working on being able to do that in 2009. And the Pentagon has had a team that has been head down and ass up figuring out how to do that kind of attack for the last 15 years. So this is not something that we just created out of nowhere. This is an capability that we've been working on for a very long time. Okay. He launched that attack. No president has had the opportunity, the courage, the wisdom, the guts, or whatever to attempt to remove what was certainly a looming existential threat to Israel and a huge threat to the rest of the world. That's something that happened last Saturday. The concern about the lack of acknowledgement of the professionalism of the strike, it just was not mentioned, not only in this room, other than by me, but in a broad spectrum across the national press. And I believe Trump, and I said it yesterday in the room, that he called the pilots, and they were upset, concerned, furious. They collectively felt that after pulling off one of the most professional military operations that I've seen in my lifetime, after pulling it off, what they heard was, nanny, boo-boo, you didn't do what you wanted to, what to do, you didn't do what you missed, you only degraded it for 3 months. It was highly critical of the attack. They're not blaming the pilots. but they were highly critical of a military operation. And when you get that in the public arena, the military personnel that are participating in that kind of thing they feel like the soldiers that came home from Vietnam having lost the war, or the soldiers that came home from Afghanistan having lost the war. But the other thing that happened, and we haven't spoken about it in this room yet, and very little of it in the national press. Every NATO country, forget Iran, every NATO country, for the first time since I've ever heard of it, except Spain, has now signed up to do 5% for defense spending. Is that not a huge and encouraging and proper decision for the safety of Europe and the Western civilization? And do you think it would have happened without Trump having been pushing them in that direction? So I just want people to sometimes take a step back and say, I don't like Trump, but I want our president to succeed. And of course, everybody in this room is going to say, I would want the president to succeed. But there are a lot of people that hate Trump so much they don't want to see him succeed. And they, in doing so, if Trump doesn't succeed, our nation doesn't succeed. So let's back off on the continuous, unending strike criticism. Say, this one you got right, Mr. President, or you at least got it partially right, and we'll have to wait and see if you got it completely right. Thank you for what you did. Now let's critique and argue and talk about what's next. That's what I was trying to say yesterday, and I maintain that same encouragement, strongly stated, to get off of this constant negativity from both sides and occasionally step back and say Biden got it right or Trump got it right. Now let's move on to the next problem. Thank you.
Thank you, Anson. I'm not sure seeking accurate information is necessarily negativism, but I can see how some people might think so.
Seeking accurate information can be done without calling Trump a liar or being delusional.
Jared, let us look at it. Yeah, this, my friend Anson.
Your audio is substandard, Scott.
Is it better or worse? Okay. Is that better or?
I can hear you, Scott.
Okay. Yeah, the blanket critique of negativity always serves the establishment, right? In the 18th century, if we had a blanket critique of negativity, it would have always served the Tories, right? It always serves establishment, authoritarian, corporate interests. So the blanket critique of negativity always serves the benefit. And I think we're in it in liberal democracy. I mean, the idea, like, when we're saying that, I said I think that it's not a bad thing that we hit Iran. I've said, and I've been very critical of Biden. So I don't know. I mean, I've heard a lot of people say in this forum that it's a good thing that we've sent Iran back. I mean, two things can be true. That can be a good thing, and Trump can be somebody that can't start a day without prevaricating. I mean, these things can both be true.
I think that the same was said of some of the commentary from this very stage about Biden. Why are you so negative? Biden is a great guy. He's doing this, he's doing that. Why do you keep bringing up his apparent degrading of his mental capacity? I recall somebody probably admonishing me for suggesting that he shuffled off the stage one day, which he did. That was being negative, and I had no right to do that, and it takes away from all the good things that he is doing. And why are you focusing on that? Well,
I said it because he shuffled off the stage. His shuffling off the stage is not necessarily an indication that he can't do the job. Oh yeah, look, he rides a bicycle. You never find Donald Trump ride a bicycle. He's far more fit than Donald Trump. Why did you say he shuffled off the stage? I got pretty strongly criticized for just stating a fact. He has a arthritic condition in his spine, which caused him to shuffle off the stage. And there's always going to be people who are critical of critique. It's just a reality. Folks, we're here Monday through Friday from 5 p.m. to 6 p.m. New York time. So till 5 p.m. New York time on tomorrow. For the next edition of the Critical Thinking Forum, everybody be safe, be well, and peace out.
It has nothing to do with their iPads. It has everything to do with with the fact that a lot of them went home to illiterate parents. A lot of those kids went home to parents who also could not read. A lot of those kids went home to parents who could not help them with their homework, who did not have proper Wi-Fi, who did not understand how to use technology to help those kids. So, it is a slew of people that we are going to have to deal with. If they were in, they're probably fucked up. But however, they do know how to use AI because they're taught how to do that. And that's just where I'm at with it.
Because I work in a school district. Your school district, what curriculum do they use to teach AI?
You said what?
Yeah, I said I work in a school district. So what in your school district that you work in or you live in or you buy into, you go to PTA meetings, PTO meetings, you go to parent teacher nights or something. What curriculum are they using for AI? Because you said they teach it.
So no, I didn't say that they. What I said was, this is the same. This is so. Wait. So what I'm saying is that I'm trying to answer your question.
No, you're not.
Let him finish. Just let him finish. No one, go ahead. What's wrong with that?
All right.
Because what is your response going to be at this point?
Are you going to respond to something that you don't know? You asked me a question, I tried to answer, and then you told me no. That don't make sense. No, I am not someone who has children. I am not active in school, in the K through 12 educational system right now. However, I do know that as a person who grew up in technology and grew up in the technology age, a lot of the stuff that I know personally had nothing to do with what I learned in school. School is for the very basic function, right? A lot of that, and even when I was in school, we were coding for MySpace, switching out bold text and shit, and that came from the colloquial learning that we did as kids, as well as what we had on top in school. And that is what is happening. These kids understand how to use AI a lot better than we do, and the reason why is because they are having conversations about a bunch of stuff that we are not having those conversations about. They're on the new thing every time something new comes out, and oftentimes every generation loses that knowledge, every generation loses that interest, and things just miss a generation, and that's what's going to happen with AI.
Okay, thank you. Are you, so you're telling me that you haven't been in a school since MySpace?
No, that's not what I'm saying.
Hold on. Even if I'm just trying to figure out what's the issue.
Because what he's positing is that schools are teaching these things, and it's not true. What he's positing is that kids are getting this somewhat language learning model, but then he's also saying that school's not for that, and then he's also saying, but the kids know, but then he's also saying if they were in COVID, they're fucked.
So I'm a little confused too, because didn't you just say when I was saying, well, when do you need AI in third grade? You said, well, it's already here. So what are you talking about?
It is already here.
It is.
So, Jordan, your name is not listed that way.
Hold on, Jordan. I just want to be clear, because before you got here, we were having a conversation, and he alluded to AI absolutely being a resource and all that stuff. So I'm a little confused. What are we talking about?
So, like I said, in the educational space, when I'm talking about brain development, emotional development, cognitive brain development, I don't think, me personally, that AI is helpful. I think it's more harmful than it is helpful because it takes away the critical thinking that one would have to do if they weren't.
No, in relationship to what he was saying that I was just saying to clear up what you were saying when you're saying that he's saying that it's not in I don't know, I feel like you're trying to prove that it's not in schools or something along those lines, but I thought that you also acknowledged that they were in that it was already to me when you said it was already here.
So once again, Vanna, when he said that it's being taught in schools, and if it's not being utilized, then there's teachers and stuff that are teaching these things. That's when I came off my mic and said, what curriculum are they teaching, and where are they teaching these things? Because they don't. That's not the way it shows up in schools. How it shows up in schools is that the kids get laptops and they get computers and they get things that are embedded with AI, right? They then are using those tools. However, AI is not subjective. So, for example, as George said, we used to use Google and MySpace. Google is not a subjective source. We know that. It's not a scholarly source. If you Google something in China around revolution, you're going to get a very different answer than other places. So what I'm referring to is it actually doesn't help critical thinking. It actually hinders critical thinking. And
that's not hold on, back up. You're going further past the point of it all. You're trying to tell him that it's not in the educational system or whatever.
No, I didn't say that.
Class it was going to be, but then hold on, Jordan, but you then conceded to saying that they were provided this, and this. The specific class, or is it provided to the schools and the teachers? I'm kind of confused. I'm confused as to why you have an issue with this answer if that's what you said.
Yes, because I'm going to say it again, Jordan. Your name is once again not Mr. No One.
Hold on, Jordan. I'm trying to understand something for myself.
Yeah. So the statement that I'm going to make is I'm going to say it again. ChatGPT is not being taught to be an effective or productive tool for our students. It is actually hindering them, and it's underutilized.
I understand. Let's get off the hindering part. So, but it is being provided, correct?
I have said that. It's independent schools. That's what I said.
Okay. So it is in schools. Is it in any particular class, Mr. Nolan? Any particular curriculum?
Oh, damn. In all of your core curriculums.
I'm sorry?
In all of the core curriculums.
In all of the core curriculums. All right.
Because the way that the programs are being run on your computer, it doesn't matter the subject. It matters the way that it's being delivered. It's not being delivered through books. It's being delivered through their iPads, through certain programs and certain learning curriculums. That's how it's showing up.
If they have an issue with it, if it's not working,
what is going on?
I don't know. Stop. Pause the conversation, please. Lord have mercy.
Pause that dumbass. AI is
Stop, please.
We got AI out here.
Get this track ass nigga off the stage.
I learned the whole curriculum in 4 hours.
Hold on, I have to remove them.
Okay. There, Mac, or name, or whatever. Goodness.
Hold on, let me try to switch this back.
No.
The horses. Damn. This is where you guys left off. EP stopped Jordan. Where the fuck is Jordan? Because he had some pushback for Jordan. At this point, do you remember specifically in one bullet only, what was your pushback for Jordan?
Jordan said that AI is being taught to be productive and effective in K-12 school, and I disagree with that.
Can
I respond or no?
Stop!
Can I respond or is Panda responding?
Wait, Jordan, trust me, I gotta shoot too.
My only question to you, did you say that?
That is what I said, and I would like to provide and continue on with the conversation.
Okay, hold on. One step at a time, trust me, 1 step at a time.
So of course you're gonna, so yes, so okay, so you did say that, and then Mr. No One's ask was, hey, do you work in the schools? No, you don't work in the schools, and what you're gonna do is tell him how you know that it is in the school or being taught We're teaching them how to use AI in the schools. Let's just do that in a straightforward, direct order.
Yeah, are you a part of PTA, this, that, parent, teacher, yada, yada? Are you
Don't
a
add
part of
shit,
that?
just let him do it.
I've been trying to get there.
Okay, Jordan, you all have it. Go ahead.
So, since, and this is very direct because you asked me about my schooling. Since I was in school, we've been learning through artificial intelligence in the way I'm providing ways. Because while I was in school, I learned how to use Microsoft Excel. I also learned how to use Papers by Apple. I learned how to use a Keynote from Apple. Those are all AI tools being taught to students, right? Continuing on through Microsoft Excel isn't artificial intelligence, it's technology.
Hold on, stop. T, you took us back just a touch. I'm sorry. I've got to, because we were not there, okay? I'm sorry, we just weren't. So here's what happened. He asked him what curriculum were they being taught in, yada, yada. I stopped knowing and said, didn't you mention that these things are all, when we were talking about, it being given to illiterate third graders, and I said, well, then don't give AI to, don't allow AI to give it to the illiterate third graders. And then he says, well, it's already there. So then he's basically asking, you didn't realize that he's basically asking Jordan the exact same question that he.
I understand that's what you branched off into. If Jordan would hurry the fuck up saying that he did not get, then he doesn't know. But in school, when he was young, they taught such and such and such, which he thinks are AI tools, but they're not. So he misunderstands something. He has no fucking clue. Miss EP said, hey, where are they doing that? And of course, not talking back in Jordan's day.
But even
So
so
now, now we're taking time to listen to Jordan's day when Jordan's talking about shit that's not AI in the first place. So then after that, after I don't know how much time he's gonna let that happen, we would migrate into your gripe, which is, hey, when we were talking, you said they were teaching it in schools. So EP, what?
So my point is, EP, why do you have to push back for Jordan? No, you're not listening too. EP, why did you have pushback for Jordan so hard? That's just a question.
Jordan said something that was inaccurate.
What was the inaccurate?
Jordan said the same shit you said. It's being taught in schools.
That's the point. It's being taught in schools. You said it, he said it. That's why I was confused as to why you were pushing back on Jordan.
I said it's in schools. I didn't say it's being taught. Jordan specifically said this. He had a whole conversation, he said, and if the kids are underutilizing ChatGPT and these AI tools, then there's a teacher, there's somebody there that's going to teach them that. And I told him, no, it's not.
The person who I pointed to were peers.
Once again, your name is still not Mr. No One.
But you're not acknowledging the person who I pointed to were peers.
Your name is still not Mr. No One.
Alright, so the person that he was pointing to were peers. Keep that in mind. Keep in mind the person that he was pointing to were peers. Just go ahead.
Good, gotcha. Well, all I'm saying is this. Bottom line is it is in schools. It's being underutilized, and it's having a net negative effect rather than a net positive effect. That's my whole point.
We already understood your point.
Also, Jordan said it was being taught in schools, and I said it's not being taught. He said if they're underutilizing, there's teachers that'll teach them that. And I'm telling him, no, that's
He didn't speak to the underutilization point.
He did say that. He said if the kids are not being taught effectively how to use AI and other tools, then there's a teacher, then there's somewhere that can show them that. And I told him, no, that's
Jordan, did you speak about underutilization?
What curriculum is he referring to when he said that? Because it's not being taught like that. It's not.
Jordan, did you speak to underutilization?
That's not what I said.
Okay, thought so.
I also mentioned that peer learning is a lot of how children.
Yep, they are.
I also said how peer learning is a part of how kids get to learn how to use technology, because a lot of the people who teach us about the shit that is in our generation are actually peers and not our elders.
Okay, cool. Jordan, thank you. Thank you for listening.
And yes, AI is being taught in schools in ways that our classes, kids are being taught how to use Adobe Photoshop and use the AI tools. They're not using the AI tools in Photoshop to edit photos.
Photoshop is not an AI program. So Jordan, so now he's going back to what he originally said. which it is being taught in schools, which is not.
Is that not?
Hold on. Here's the thing. He's saying that like Adobe Photoshop and all those different applications are in schools, and there's AI, and they're AI powered, or components of them have there's AI integrated in certain components at least. So how it's being taught in schools, don't really know. Maybe by default, I don't know the ins and outs of those programs. I don't know if we need to add some specifics to this conversation. When we say AI is being taught in schools, what exactly do we mean? Something more like generative chat, like GPTs, OpenAI, ChatGPT, or are we talking about just AI, the person's AI period, and using those tools and navigating?
Because the kids are learning through artificial intelligence. And that is why I'm very specific about like when using Microsoft Office, a lot of those things have AI tools in them. So kids, we have been learning through artificial intelligence for a really long time. So it's intellectually dishonest to say that it's a downfall for society.
Jordan, our kids using Microsoft Office now. No kids will be in the school system, so I feel like you can't comment on that because, bro, you ain't got no kids, you're not involved in school. It's just my 2 cents I gotta have. Like, y'all keep repeating the same talking points for the past 20 minutes again, but I just think if you don't have a kid, you don't go to PTA, then you really just talking from your emotion. You have no facts to prove that. And I'm not saying you're wrong. You could be right. But I'm just saying, the guy said he works in the school system. You don't even have a kid or partake in it. Can we please dead this? Like, can y'all just stop? Like, come on now. Like, for sure, we done heard it all.
No, yeah, exactly. I was about to next, move on. Thanks, Kobe, but no thanks. Sorry. The thing is that you don't have to be up in no environment or whatever. If he's speaking off of what he knows, his perspective, whatever, he can give it if he wants to. Okay? A lot of you niggas speak on females and y'all ain't never been a female before. Ain't that funny? Now let's move on. Okay?
Yeah, let me ask a couple questions. So, what the fuck? Mr. Nolan, say kids are being taught through AI. I think it's using AI to learn or something like that. Is that the case? That's the baseline of this discussion, at least the discussion at this point. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. I know it's just a little skeletal kind of thing. And when you're describing that, what does that look like? Is that the ChatGPT as a tool next to you while you're learning, or what are we talking about what are we talking about there? Am I tracking ChatGPT in school?
Wait, I'm saying it has a net negative effect.
I know I'm not talking about your points. I'm just talking about what has that negative. ChatGPT usage. AI is so much shit. That's what we're getting. Okay, fine. So then Jordan says, hey, there's AI features within these other tools, so they are learning through AI, and I think that's a fucking stretch like a motherfucker. I for the life of me, you know. So do you understand? So that's the issue there. He's talking about ChatGPT and its usage by school children and how that's detrimental to some level. And then Jordan saying, well, it's been around because there's some AI features that have been around. Jesus Christ. And this is what happens when y'all are bulleted, right? In your responses. Now we gotta sit here and filter through all that shit, figure out what your points are. When there's confusion, it's like that, you know. And then drown in bullshit, not the bullshit, but just the actual shit. If we can try to be punchy to the point, maybe a bullet at a time, you know, that'd be better, you know. So I don't even know. My only thing I'm thinking about is like, damn, how possible is it for people? Like, you know, I don't know how possible it is for people to switch their whole fucking style up, but like at least try. Panda.
Yeah.
Anything left here?
There's as far as in education, I think
yes, that's really EP's point, which is it's a hindrance when you have kids that aren't that are still learning their foundational schools and using AI, or it's a hindrance. So it's pointing at something there.
He's pointing out like AI's usage for people whose foundational skills are weak at this point, just weak. Period. Okay. So then, what he should do, I think, I'm hoping he would do, is point to how that looks different. So here's something. Someone whose skills are, or who has a strong foundation using AI, right? What that looks like versus someone who has a weak foundation. Put the kids in that category. Okay. I mean, I can always try to answer for you, but like, I think that would be his overall point. Theirs. So unless you want to just land on it's a hindrance and then just have everybody imagine how it is, or maybe type it into their AI and figure it out for themselves, But at some point we gotta button this shit up so we can.
He thinks it's a hindrance in the education system. I just
in the education to the kids, it's a hindrance to the
kids. Yeah.
Right. So the education incorporating or allowing that is a hindrance to the kids. It's a hindrance to anybody, right? Whether it's a kid who has a weak foundation or anybody who's just fucking uneducated, right? And I'm just going to use that just broadly or whatever. Yeah, shit. A lot of shit is a fucking hindrance, Especially when you're using a tool, you may be over reliant on the fucking tool. You're not going to pick up on, you're not going to understand what things require more context. You're reading some shit, it's the end all be all.
I agree, let's all become wigs.
Context or shit that's maybe a hallucination, is incorrect, period, you're gonna miss shit, right? Now, I'm not saying I don't know if that's a hindrance, but think about it. Somebody missing shit, there's risk that come with it, and that you be depending on shit that you may not fully understand, and your ability to identify and or at least gauge, your aptitude, right, or your proficiency in whatever you looked up, that meter's going to be off, right, because you're uneducated or you don't have a foundation to know, like, okay, yeah, I looked this up, and this is how I should be considering this information, as opposed to over relying on it, or that you're Dunning-Kruger shit going on. I think somebody who has a strong foundation is going to have the ability to pick up on, whether or not something requires more context or nuance, shit like that.
So the question would be now, are we outsourcing to, not even just kids, are we, everybody, outsourcing too much of their memory and problem solving to AI?
Memory and problem solving? Are we too much of their memory?
And problems. It was just the problem solving. Are we outsourcing too much of our problem solving to AI?
Problem solving to AI. And that's an interesting one, right? Because it's like, look, some people can, right? When they punch it in, get an answer, and boom, it's really not much firing off there, in and out. But so I could say yes, and for anybody, foundation or not, yeah, I can say yeah. But at the same time, people are kind of different, where somebody may receive the answer and then interrogate the answer further, and then interrogate it further, and then down the route, you know what I'm saying? And then there's just thinking skills that happen there. And that's for certain, I guess, kind of type of content. When it comes to like fucking math or something, shit, fuck. You're not building that then, you're not, you know what I'm saying? Like, yeah, if the shit is doing this cognitive processes for you, sure. But my only point there is that the cognition doesn't stop for some people, on the result generation, like they generate the result, and then if that's the end all be all, no, it might actually see other shit that gets you thinking critically about the answer, and then, you know what I'm saying? So it just depends, you know what I'm saying? How now we're gonna go back to kids, and kids are taught to be not to critically think, accept the answer, it is what it is, not fully understand. Yikes. But that's it varies. It depends on the individuals and perhaps the foundation that they have. It is in its strength. I'll tell you something straight up. You could have got better answers throughout this whole conversation with AI.
let's lighten up for a second. We're gonna do a quick little exercise. What's the coolest thing you've ever done or with AI? Somebody shared something really cool where she said that she was learning how to communicate more effectively. What did she say? Non-violent communication. I need to type that in. Okay. And it's really helped in various parts of her life, including her relationship. Pretty sure she said she was pretty excited about that. I can understand it. Have you guys done anything cool with AI? Aside from all you on Clubhouse?
I use Suno to generate a record. I tried it. Hold on. Chill, little girl. I use Suno, it's an AI music creator program. I use that to generate a record. I use Gemini, and I also use ChatGPT. And basically, I use Gemini and ChatGPT in tandem to train each other. So I do a lot of research, I do a lot of digging. I told y'all I was in school for computers.
Well, there's nothing that I've seen that suggests that we didn't hit exactly what we wanted to hit in those locations.
It's about highly enriched uranium. Do you have certainty that all the highly enriched uranium was inside the Four Dome Mountain, or some of it, because there were satellite photos that showed more than a dozen trucks there 2 days in advance? Are you certain none of that highly enriched uranium was moved?
Of course, we're watching every single aspect. But Jennifer, you've been about the worst. The one who misrepresents the most intentionally. What the president says, I'm familiar.
Manipulations, shafts on Saturday night. And in fact, I was the first to describe the B-2 bombers, the refueling, the entire mission with great accuracy. So I take issue with that.
I appreciate you acknowledging that this is the first to operate with the most successful mission based on operational security that this department has done since you've been here. I appreciate that. So we're looking at all aspects of intelligence and making sure we have a sense of what was where.
Acknowledge the female pilots that also participated in this mission. The early messages that you sent out only congratulated the boys.
So when I say something like our boys and bombers, see, this is the kind of thing the press does, right?